Welcome to ARCTutorials. If you're working on JavaScript or any of the modern tech stacks like React, Express.js, Nest or Next.js, chances are that you will have to write tests. Today, I'm going to show you how do you write your first test using Jest library. It's a popular library. It's used across different enterprises for small and big projects, and you should know Jest library if you want to become a better developer. With that being said, let's get started. I'm going to show you everything you need to write your first test in Jest. We'll start writing with some basic JavaScript code, test it, and then keep increasing some complexity. The idea is to show you and build confidence in you that you can write tests easily. With that being said, let's jump right into code. The first thing I'm going to do is create a folder so that I can show you everything from scratch and nothing you miss out. Alright, so I'm in that folder. I'm going to do npm init, give the basic details if you want to fill in. I'm just leaving for now. Alright, the next thing you'll do is npm install jest save -dev. So this will install the Jest for us. While it's building, please do hit that like button and subscribe button. So our package is installed. That's good. I'm also going to install Axios library. That's one of the popular libraries for making HTTP calls. That's used in Express, React, NestJS, and most projects. All right. So that being done, if you check our package, we got the Jest, we got the Axios. That's good for now. Now let's start writing our test scripts. Before we do that, we will need a file to test, right? So basically, I'm going to start with the basic JavaScript code to build your confidence. So I'm writing a simple method. All it does is a plus b and return you that value. It's a method which takes two parameters and will return you the sum of it. Then we will export this using module.exports equal to sum. Once you have exported, now we can write our script by the same name. The only condition and criteria is that the file name should end with test.js. Okay, whatever file name you have given, same file name dot test.js. When we run the command to test, it will find all the files which are having an extension of .test.js and will execute them. Alright, so that being said, now let's start writing our script to verify the method that we have written. So I'm going to require /sum. We are importing that method, and now we are good to start writing. So first we'll write describe. What is it? Validating some method, and then callback. Okay, and then we will write our test, and inside this you will write what you are trying to test. So let's say I'm saying addition of two numbers. Okay, now that you have done it, then callback. Okay, give us space. Alright, so now that we have it in place, we will write our expect statement, and we are saying when the sum method is called with values 10 and 20, the expected outcome to be 30. Now this is the most simplest example I can show you ever. It cannot get easier than this. These are called assertions. Okay, there are a lot of built-in assertions like to be, to equal, to not to be, etc., etc. But for you, since you're starting to learn Jest, this is the one that I would encourage you to start testing with. Okay, I will cover some more as we move along, but for now just understand use to be, that is the value that you are expecting it to be. That being said, how do you run it? You type npx jest and enter. It will find all the files which are ending with .test.js, execute it and show you the result here. You can add any number of tests inside a describe statement like this. Okay, but since we have only one method for now, we have only one test. All right, so this is the most simplest first test script that you should write when you are trying to learn Jest. But I will not leave you high and dry, and that's why I'm going to write some more examples to show you that you already know. If you know JavaScript, you can easily write tests, and that's the confidence I want to see in you. That's the confidence I want to build in you. So let's go ahead and I will write some more examples. I'm going to say fetch data.js. Now in this I'm going to increase the little bit of complexity. Okay, so our JS will be little bit tricky, but don't get too much confused. It's just a promise that I'm returning in this. So I will write new and promise. So promise will have reject and resolve. So reject, and then what we are going to do that, and I'm going to simply say set timeout and say after 1 second resolve this and return a data. Right, now you can return any data you want, JSON, string, integer. So for now let's say I'm returning a string, and I'm saying once this function will make a it has a promise inside it, and once this returns the promise after 1 second, it would just be that data which is the string ARCTutorials. Right, so why did I write that? This is to show you that when you have methods like this which has promises, some code like this, how do you still test them? That's the confidence I want to build in you. Alright, so this is my code. Now to write the test case, write fetch data.test.js, same file name with extension .test.js. As usual, the first thing we'll do is require and bring that method fetch data. Once you have it, we can write describe again and give and say what are we testing, validating fetch data, and then callback, and inside this again test. Okay, and then we are going to write what is it doing, testing for promise resolving. Okay, and then again callback and close it. Now here we will now write again expect, and now call the method fetch data, and we know, but before we do that, it's returning a promise, so we will write return fetch data, call that method, then what should we do? We will get data, and then what do we do with the data? We will validate it. We will check that data to equal, say, ARCTutorials. That's what is our expected outcome. So we are saying when we call this method, when we call this particular method, we'll get data back because it's a promise. So that data should expect that data to be equal to the string that we gave in our method, which is ARCTutorial. Simple as that, right? Now let's go ahead and run the same way, npx jest. Now it will run two files. Okay, so it says failed. Now let's see why. Okay, so it says validation has failed, fetch data is not working. Okay, I know why, because we did not export it. Exports equal to fetch data. Okay, so now this should get resolved. Make sure that you write that module.export. So now you see it says it executed two files which is ending with test.js, and both are passing. This is second example. I hope you are building your confidence in writing the test. I'm going to write one more JavaScript code, which is a common use case in most projects, which is to make a HTTP call and then get the value. So let me show you that. So Axios call.js. In this, I'm going to write a method. What it will do is make a API call, and we will test that. So again, require. Now in this I'm importing Axios because that's a library that's used in React, Express.js to make HTTP calls. Now we got the Axios. Now I'm going to write a async method, and what it would do is make that HTTP call and get user data. I'll pass an ID of a user and I will make a API call to get the data. So since it's an async, I'm going to write try catch and console log the error, and in the try I'm going to say get the response for the API call. So I'm going to say response. Here we'll write await axios dot get. Right now this is a built-in method get, which will make a get call to a URL that will provide. So I'm going to say HTTPS. There is a free API mock service which is called JSON placeholder type code. I'm going to use this, and I'm going to parameterize this value that we are passing from our URL, from the function. So what this does is it will make a API call to this particular URL and will get us the response. Now all we will do is we'll return this response dot data. Okay, that's all for this method. Now it's just making an API call and returning you the data. Again export it and say get user data, save it. Okay, so in most real-time cases you will anyway be making a API calls, so that's why I've taken this example. Alright, so now that you have this method, let's create the test file, axios call dot test dot js. Now in this we will need to import two things, axios and our get user data. User data, or what was it, axios call, right? Okay, so now we have the get user data. Now we are saying just dot mock axios. We are mocking that particular API request. Describe mock testing HTTP callback. Inside this test we will write validate get user data, and then again callback, and then in this we are going to mock the data, okay, that the response. So I'm saying mock response data is equal to, it will be a JSON object with ID say 1 and say name equal to ARCTutorials. Okay, so all I have is a simple ID and name. That's what I'm going to return. If you see here, ID and name are there, right? So you can add the same things. Username, you can add any number of fields. We really don't know, since it's anyway mock data, it doesn't matter, right? Okay, so I got the ARCTutorials JSON ID created. So that's a mock response that we will validate against. Now I'm saying axios dot get dot. Now we'll use a new one called mock, okay, resolved value once. Okay, so what this does is basically it will return this data that we have. So axios will say that whenever there is a get call, it will resolve only, it will make this mock data as an output. It will return that only once. Okay, that is for testing the mock response. Now that we have it, just say user equal to, it's a async method, so we are writing get user data and we'll pass a user ID 1. Now it says await expressions are only included in, so is this not async? It is async. What have we written? Await, it should ideally get user data Inside the Axios call, we have our async, and we are having await. This we are returning. This is good. Async function. Let's see what are we getting called here. It says await. I think I'm okay, because if it's an async, I'm going to write here also, and this should solve it. Async. Oh, here it should be async. Okay. So yeah, so here you'll write async because we have it's an async method. Okay, so now I have constant user get user data, and then we are going to do a assertion and say expect user, right, to equal the mock data that we have, mock response data. Okay, that's all we would do. Okay, now let's see this in action. Let's run it. npx jest. It failed. Okay, let's see why it failed. So it says jest.mock doesn't exist. Okay, so let's see why. That's because this should be in quotes. Now run again. So now it waited for this async call to get complete, and then it passed all the three tests, right? So it's very simple. Don't get too scared by seeing this code or anything. It's dead simple. All we are doing is mocking the data, comparing with assertions, right? This is the mock data that we are setting that Axios should return. Here is our function which would then compare. Okay, so inside this we are making a get call, which is this. It will mock the data and return us the response. Okay, now let's say there was a failure, okay, or anything. Okay, we can keep adding expectations to it and say throws error, etc., etc., but that's for higher. But you want me to code that also? Let's do that. Okay, let's say I want to write a scenario where my API fails. So I'm saying validation of API failure. Okay, all right, so this is a bonus for you. I initially thought I'll write only few, but since it's getting interesting, I'll continue coding. All right, so what I want to do is I want to handle the failure use case also. Let's say my API fails, right? So what should happen when API fails? That's what I want to test. So you can use axios.get dot. Now this is where you will use. There is a built-in method called mock rejected value once. Just like how you have mock resolved value, you have something called mock rejected value. What this will do is it will tell you what to do when there is a failure. So here I'm saying new error, and I'm saying API failed or something like that, right? Okay, so now I'm saying my API, let's say let's fail it. Okay, so I'm going to say await, and then expect. In this case I'm going to say get user data should be failing, and because I have written here that when it fails we should do that. So here I'm saying get user data has failed, and then I'm going to say rejects dot to throw an error. Okay, now here you can say fail to get user data. Okay, so all we are telling is Axios, when this API will make a get call, mock the rejected value. That means what should happen when it fails. So we are saying throw a new error, and then here we are saying expect this method when it will call API, it should get rejected, and then it should throw an error. Okay, let's see that. Now let's again type npx test and see what should happen. It failed. So let's go here, and it says received promise resolved instead of rejected. Okay, so validation rejects to throw, validation of API has failed. Okay, So here it says API request failed, which is as per expectation, right? We wanted it to fail, and that's where we are covering it, right? So that's how you would throw errors, or you can handle negative use cases, etc. You want this to fail because you're rejecting and you're throwing that error. And if you want to see further details, you can see uh, here also, and it should say validation of API failure, right? So this is expected outcome, okay, because we wanted it to fail. That's why we are throwing this reject.throw. So these are some of the commonly used cases that are used for testing, but I'm sure I've covered enough use cases for you to build confidence of writing your own first steps in testing with Jest. I hope you have enjoyed. I hope I have covered enough use cases for you to build your confidence. And thank you so much for joining in this episode. Please do watch out my other episodes on Express.js, MySQL CRUD. I have a series on Bootstrap, Angular. The learning continues. Thank you so much for joining in this episode. I hope you have enjoyed. I hope you have learned. I'll continue series in the next episode. Thank you.